If you have a true scary story you want to share with the channel, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to send it my way, or email it to astheravendreams@gmail.com. And of course, thank you. Hi, Raven. I've been listening to your Glitch in the Matrix stories for years, and I only just recently started listening to other scary and strange stories that you have on your channel. And today, I realized I have one of those stories to tell. So, I live in New Zealand, and about 5 years ago, my friend and I were volunteering on an uninhabited island called Matuihi, and if I mispronounce that, I apologize. Nobody lives here because it has many native and endangered animals like the kiwi and tuatara. We were helping to cut walking paths and plant native trees. The only people on the island were my friend and I, who were both girls in our early 20s, as well as the caretaker and his wife, who were the only people to live on the island permanently. We stayed 3 nights and would get time off working each day to explore the island. On the last day, my friend and I went separate directions, and although it was May, which is the middle of winter in New Zealand, I went to the beach to sunbathe and have a swim, because it was very sunny. The walk from camp to the beach was about 40 minutes. I was laying on the beach when I noticed a boat about 50 meters offshore. There was a naked man standing on the deck. I imagined it must be a couple having a romantic holiday together, and that they must not have expected anyone to be on this beach, as it's usually deserted. So I tried not to look in that direction to give privacy to whoever it was. Of course, I couldn't help myself but glance that way every so often, wondering if I would spot another naked person with the man. I was giggling a little to myself, imagining how embarrassed they would be when they saw me. After about 10 minutes of being there, I looked over and I noticed that the man was still alone, still naked, and he was now getting the dinghy boat ready to take to the shore. He was looking in my direction, getting on board the little boat, and then he started to head my way, alone and still naked. All of a sudden, I was very scared. The camp where I was staying was quite a ways back, and I was completely alone on the beach with a naked man coming towards me. I got up and walked toward the bush where the path back was, and I kept looking over my shoulder. He got off the dinghy and started walking toward me, still naked. There was about 100 meters between us, and I started running, terrified by now. I ran as fast as I could towards the camp. I continued to look back, and I saw that he started running too, chasing me. At the time, I was not very fit, and I had a long way to go to get back to where people were, and it was so incredibly scary. I ran as fast as I could, and he just kept following me. I would turn around every so often and see this naked man chasing behind me through the trees. I had a burning stitch in my side, and I thought that I couldn't physically keep running, but every time I would stop, I could hear or see him coming from behind me. I've never had to push myself to run like that in my life, but I knew that I could not stop. Finally, I got back to the camp and I told the caretaker. The man was nowhere to be seen. We called the police and they sent a police boat to his boat, but apparently he denied it and there was nothing they could do. Sometimes, I wonder what he would have done if he had caught up to me. Hey everyone. I'm at my wit's end and, frankly, starting to scare myself. I've been lurking here for a while, mostly reading other people's stories, but now I'm living something that I can't explain, and I need to know if anyone has ever felt anything like this. Somewhere around 3 months ago, I was caught in a pretty chaotic situation downtown. Nothing super dramatic, but definitely jarring. I was waiting for the light to change at a really busy intersection when, out of nowhere, there was this unbelievably loud, high-pitched screech. Not like tires or metal, more like a pure vibrating frequency that seemed to vibrate through my bones. It lasted maybe a few seconds tops, but it was so disorienting that people actually stumbled and covered their ears. Everyone was looking around confused, but it just stopped. No crash, no explosion, no source. It was just a sudden, violent sound that vanished. No one knew what it was, and no one was able to explain it. We all just kind of laughed and said, "Wow, that was really weird," and then moved on with our lives. As I was trying to get my bearings, still a little dizzy, I made eye contact with this guy across the street. He was standing near a lamppost, looking just as bewildered and a little pale as I felt. Our eyes locked for a long moment. It wasn't a romantic thing, just this shared, intense, what the hell was that moment. We both just kind of nodded at each other, and then the crowd started moving again, and we went our separate ways. I thought nothing of it, just a weird blip in a mundane day. But then, about a week later, things started to get weird. I would be at home completely fine, and then I would randomly think of that guy, and I would get hit with this really intense wave of anxiety. It was like a cold dread washing over me completely unprovoked. Or I would get this weird metallic taste in my mouth, and would start to feel like I was going to get sick. Like spinning room, I'm about to lose my lunch levels of sick. This happened a few times. Enough that I made an appointment with my doctor, who is booked up for like 3 weeks, so it was 3 weeks out. Of course, as soon as I booked the appointment, it pretty much stopped. But then, other weird things would happen. I would be doing laundry, and again, I would suddenly think of that guy and just get angry. Like filled with rage, angry. I would get this jarring flash of sensory input, some shock to my system, and I would literally want to scream. I felt like I was a child having a tantrum, just wanting to throw myself to the floor and scream, kick, and cry. I'm a fairly stable person, at least I like to believe that I am, and I have never had emotional issues like this. I kind of just dealt with this until my doctor's appointment. I did my best to explain what was going on without sounding like a crazy person. From what she could tell, I was fine. Not pregnant, no major issues on any of the tests or blood work. She had a specialist that she wants me to see, but that's a near future thing, as they are also booked up. But from what she could tell, I was perfectly healthy, and it was probably just a passing thing. Maybe it was just anxiety. It mostly subsided, but I would still randomly get hit with the emotional bursts, and it got so unsettling that I started trying to find that guy. I remembered his face pretty clearly, and the intersection. I spent way too much time scrolling through local news pages, looking at photos from nearby businesses on social media, just anything. It felt obsessive, but I had this gut feeling that he was connected. And then about a month ago, I found him. It was a photo from a local community event posted online. Same guy. I knew it instantly. I won't share his information, obviously, but confirming that he existed only made things worse. Since then, the connection, or whatever it is, has seemingly intensified. I feel constantly drained, like my own energy is being siphoned off. What I think are his emotions, which now often seem to be agitation or deep sadness or simmering resentment, hit me hard and often. Sometimes I hear what sounds like snippets of his thoughts. Not words that I understand, but that faint mental static or the emotional tone of a frustrated internal monologue. The worst part is that feeling of being watched. Not physically, but like a constant unseen awareness is directed at me. I'll be in my apartment alone and suddenly get this overwhelming sensation that he's, I don't know, feeling me, knowing what I'm doing. It makes my skin crawl. I have literally no idea what to do. I've tried meditating, tried to ignore it, and I even yelled for it to stop, but nothing is doing it. In fact, sometimes it feels like when I try to push it away, it gets worse, almost like a frustrated pushback. I know that I sound insane, I accept that. My friends would just tell me that I'm having a mental breakdown, which maybe I am, but I feel like I'm experiencing some sort of psychic link to someone that I've never met, and will likely never meet again. So I have to ask, what the hell do I do? Is this a soulmate thing? Or is this some kind of weird universal joke and my life is the punchline? How do you even begin to cope with someone else's entire emotional landscape bleeding into your life like this, and you just can't escape it? I'm seriously getting scared for my mental health, and possibly my physical health, and I'm pretty sure the specialist is just going to tell me that I'm fine physically, that this is all mental. Well, let me tell you, I'm definitely feeling mental. It's been a very interesting life so far. I'm 31. I'm just gonna wing it here and keep it short, but not leave out important details. I have around 3 stories that I'll send. I'm sending the first one your way now. I live in a small town in Upper Michigan, way out in the woods. Population of around 800, over a 30-mile radius. I used to play with my friend at this abandoned homemade baseball field that an elderly man had for many decades in his backyard, unused and overgrown. When standing at home plate, straight ahead 100 yards is woods. To the right 100 yards is woods, and to the left 200 yards down is a narrow field, then my house. This will paint the picture of the event that started everything. I was around 6 years old playing in my front yard, and I happened to look toward the abandoned baseball field, and I saw what looked to be a very tall, probably at least 10 feet if I had to guess, the memory is vivid, thing. It had black fur and resembled what we call Bigfoot. It was standing at home plate of the baseball field, and it threw a giant rock, probably a few feet wide, so very heavy, all the way into the woods straight ahead and a bit to the left my way. I could still hear the thump and the branches cracking to this day. I start to run toward it out of curiosity, and the memory then fades. Whatever it was very strong and very big. The next few years, a recurring event happened to me for at least a couple of years. I don't know how many times. It would always be dark out, very late at night. I'd be sitting in my living room on the couch, and everyone would be sleeping, and I would always find myself staring at a pitch-black window, at a pair of bright red eyes that, to this day, I cannot think about them very long, or I get shaken up. The eyes were much further apart than ours and just bigger. Time always felt like it stood still. It felt as if it was curious, and so was I. I don't recall any conversations, but I do recall feeling connected, and maybe just because we looked at each other so much that it formed a connection. This happened for a couple of years. I don't know how often, but enough for it to feel normal. I don't know if it was a friend or something curious or something else entirely. I left that house at the age of 11. To this day, I cannot comfortably look out a window at night. I don't know how I would react if I saw those eyes again. Shortly after all this, UFOs and encounters entered my life, I'll send those to you next time if you're interested, and thank you for taking the time to read this. I'm just a truth seeker, and these experiences have made me obsessed in a healthy way. I listen to you most nights, and have had a few ghost experiences over the years. This is one of them. I hadn't lived in Newcastle for years, but the memory that haunts me the most comes from my teens back in the mid-80s. I was about 14 then, running with the street kid named Bo. He was 16, rough around the edges, but he had this way of lighting up a room with a grin. Later on, the Newcastle Herald would dub him the king of the street kids, but to me, he was just Bo, my mate. We were inseparable. Weekends, I would ride the train from Shortland to Wickham just to meet him. Sometimes he'd be at the pink elephant markets, slipping things into his pockets like it was a game. Other times he would show up at my house, and my mum, never knowing he was homeless, would pile food on his plate, smiling as if feeding him might fix everything. We roamed the cemeteries, alleys, train stations. We were kids chasing mischief. But beneath it all, Bo carried a heaviness that I couldn't name back then. He would vanish for days at a time. I'd search the streets for him until my feet blistered. I hated those silences more than anything. One night, after hours of looking, I sat alone on the Wickham train platform, exhausted and close to tears. Bo crept up behind me, laughing as I jumped out of my skin. I was furious and relieved all at once. He was tipsy but alive. That was Bo, always testing me, always slipping back into my life when I thought I had lost him. But then came the silence that didn't break. A week, 2 weeks, nothing. I wasted away with worry, dragging myself through school, my stomach knotted with hunger and grief. And then, one Saturday night, I found myself wandering Hunter Street, past the shuttered pink elephant markets, over the bridge, towards Islington. The Wickham pub roared with drunken voices, so I slipped onto the quiet park beside it. The moon was full, the night was alive with trains, crickets, the distant rev of cars. I sat on a bench, breathing, just listening. For the first time in weeks, I felt almost safe. Then I heard a sound beside me, and a shadow sat on the bench. "Pete?" The voice was his. "I'm sorry. So sorry." My throat locked up. "Bo?" "I messed up and I couldn't find you, Pete." Tears burned down my face. "Where have you been? What do you mean?" Silence. I turned and he was gone. The bench was empty. The night sounds rushed back in, the clatter of trains, the jeers of drunkards from the pub. My calls for him were swallowed by their laughter. A week later, I was at school waiting for the principal when I noticed a newspaper lying on the chair beside me. I never cared for the news, but the photo froze me. Bo crouched low, dressed in black, graffiti behind him. The headline said that he had hung himself in that same park, opposite the Wickham pub, weeks earlier. But I had seen him. I'd spoken to him. To this day, I believe that Wickham Park is haunted. Not by strangers, nor shadows, but by Bo himself, still searching and lingering. And one day, I will find him again. Hello, Raven. I recently stumbled upon your podcast while drawing and doing puzzles a few days ago, and have enjoyed listening to them. I have a story that I'm not sure if it's a glitch in the Matrix or a UFO sighting, but I don't know where else to post this. So, this was back in probably 2020, when my family and I were driving home from a trip to Florida. I was in the back seat of the car and looking out the window at the clouds. I like to watch clouds and find images in them to draw. When I saw something in the sky, it was very high up, like as high as one of those commercial planes that you see, but it didn't look like a plane at all. For a description, it was shaped sort of like an uppercase Y with 2 points going off of the front and one in the back. There was also barely any center to it, just 3 points that met in the middle. On top of this, there was a second object trailing behind the craft, which was shaped like a crescent moon. The thing is, I couldn't see anything attaching this crescent to the first craft. It was just floating behind it. The whole thing, both crafts, seemed to be made of metal, as it looked shiny. Something else that was weird was that the triangle craft was not moving with the long point first as planes do, but was rather moving as if the cockpit was directly in between the first 2 points where they met the center. I watched this thing in the sky for a few moments before I saw it go behind a cloud. I got out the old iPhone that I had so I could take a picture of it when it came back out from behind the clouds, but it never did. It just vanished. I never saw that strange of an aircraft again, and I'm still not sure what it was, because I've never seen any real aircraft that looked anything like it. Anyway, I hope this story makes it into a video or podcast, and thank you for taking the time to read it. I have other stories to share, ones that actually are creepy glitches, and maybe I will sometime. I'm not sure how you want to categorize this one, Raven. It's a familiar subject, but one I haven't heard you cover, and it's courtesy of the least likely source, my dad. We call my dad the world's greatest skeptic, but there are 2 exceptions to this disbelief. He can witch water, which was a huge shock to him, and he has seen spontaneous human combustion. I've known about the latter for most of my life, but he's never been willing to talk about it when I asked him. Last month, though, I was working on something in the kitchen as he was doing the dishes, and he asked offhand if the subject of spontaneous human combustion ever came up in my studies. Well, it never came up in my forensic anthropology studies, but I have studied the phenomenon for reasons I'll have to tell you about some other time. So I responded, casually, so as not to scare him into silence, that the sources I've seen generally concluded that it was unexplained. He agreed that it was true of his experience, too. Mind you, even decades after retirement, Dad is a firefighter to the bone. Even after he became disabled, he trained others, instituted changes in the local volunteer fire department that made fire insurance available for our rural area for the first time ever, and sent reports to insurance companies when he recognized the signs of arson. In short, he knows his stuff, but he had no explanation for what he found that day. It happened early in his career, 1959 or 1960, in Santa Rosa, California. They arrived at the scene due to a neighbor reporting smoke. When they arrived, the captain took one sniff of the air and announced that someone was dead and burned inside the house. How did he know? Maybe from his years of experience as a firefighter. Maybe he was a World War II veteran. Dad didn't know. But when they got inside, they found a man dead on the armchair with not much left of him but parts of his extremities and some cremains. But nothing else in the room was burned, and even the chair had little damage. Apparently, it freaked everyone out enough that no one talked about it after. As far as Dad knows, there was no investigation. Dad didn't have anything else to say about that, but it wasn't the end of the conversation. I'm not going to betray any confidences, but I want to tell you all that what haunts my dad all these years later isn't the mysterious fate of that individual. What haunts Dad is the eventual fate of his captain. People, you gentlemen, In particular, please hear me. The most courageous thing you can ever do in your life is to ask for help. When things get bad, please find the courage to seek help. Don't try to self-medicate with substance and never assume that you are alone. More people care about you than you have any idea of. They are willing to help, and will bear the scars for life if your problems overwhelm you and they don't realize it's happening until it's too late. That's the end of my PSA. Just remember, as Raven keeps telling us, you are loved, you are valid, you are important, and don't forget it. Hello, I'm one of your listeners, and I thought I would send in some of my stories. I'll start with the ones that I've been thinking about recently. I recall becoming self-aware. I don't remember what age I was, but I think it was before I went to kindergarten. I woke up one day looking at my hands with the strangest feeling like I'm me. The strange thing is that I have some memories before that happened, and I remember thinking about things I shouldn't have understood at that age. In particular, I remember thinking about becoming self-aware, how it would be a major milestone for years to come, and I would try writing it down. Find a place to hide the paper so I might stumble across it when I was older. There was something I wanted to warn myself about too, a future event, but my mind jumped to a different topic, and I never wrote anything down. Second story. I think it was in 2nd grade going into 3rd grade, right after school got out for the summer. I had an extremely vivid dream, literally exactly like reality, where I was back for the next school year. I was so annoyed with it that I literally just skipped my summer. This wasn't like the first day of school, it was like I started halfway into the year or something. So I go home and the rest of the day played out like it normally would. But I remember it felt so long. It ended when I fell asleep in my dream. I was confused, waking up like, was that a dream? It felt like I lived out an entire day in the dream. Later after school went back into session, I had a day that played out exactly like the one in the dream did. I had problems differentiating between reality and my dreams that following year. Third, around the time of my second story is when I remember my first flash forwards starting. Let me explain what I mean by that. Randomly, I would have a quick flash of an image pop up in my mind, with a brief set of text describing the background context for it. These would always later happen, and I would flash back, in deja vu, to when I saw it for the first time. The text would always somehow apply to it as well. The first one I actually remember in full is kind of funny, although I was extremely mad when it happened to me. I believe it was during the summer leading up to my 6th grade year when I had the flash forward. I was given the perspective of standing behind a kid that I went to school with, bending over and grabbing a binder from a shelf at the far end of the classroom, with desks on either side. It was funny because you could see his butt showing. Apologies for being crass. In the image, the text said, "Your first Saturday school." So, come 6th grade, first period, math, the teacher was very particular about tardies. I hated her class, and her especially. You could be given a tardy while being in the room. Anyway, more or less that event played, and it caused me to get a Saturday school from the amount of tardies that I'd had, and most of which were from her because she was freaking ridiculous. They got more frequent as time went on, and looking back, they always highlighted a minor event in my young life. Fourth story. Skipping past an event similar in type to this, more personal, doesn't involve death though. In 10th grade, we had a classmate die in a house fire right before Christmas. The last time I saw her, I had a voice pop up in my mind and say that I would never see her again. And I had images of her friends crying. I felt like she was going to die, but I didn't warn her because I had nothing to do with her at all. And how could she believe me anyway? I kind of feel guilty that I didn't warn her now, but I wasn't in the best spirits from being depressed from my home life at the time. Fifth, on a different topic, a couple of years ago I tried working as a janitor. Terrible experience. While I was retrieving something from summer cleaning, I saw a figure peek around the corner at me, to a T section in the hallway. At first I thought it was my boss, but then I realized it was too tall. I got a little closer and realized that this thing had no discernible features. It was solid black, like a shadow, but 3D. The best I can compare it to is those old paranormal shows, like The Haunted with the CGI recreations of events. It looked exactly like one of the CGI shadow creature things. And sixth, this is my last one that I'll write. This is probably the only experience I've had that I think could be a glitch or something similar. I was standing out, waiting to be picked up from a school event, when I noticed a car approaching from the north. It looked to be some type of sedan, dark in color. To set the setting, there's hardly anything obstructing my view other than a few trees. Just as this vehicle would be obstructed for a second by one particular tree about a football field away, it just vanished. It was just inexplicably gone. Hey Raven, this happened to my dad Mike last week, and he told me that I could post it on here, so here I go. I should preface this by saying that my entire family is religious, including myself. Last weekend, my dad developed a heat stroke that put him down for several days. During that time, my dad prayed that he would be able to get closer to God. He felt like he wasn't a good enough Christian. Literally the next day, my dad got into his partner's, that's work partner, not life partner, van and found a coin sitting on the sheet. His partner came out and told him that he found the coin and thought of my dad, knowing that he's a Christian. He read the first 2 lines and thought it was a really cool message, and then he put it away. When he got home, he read the entire thing front and back. I have a couple of pictures of the coin so you can see for yourself. I hope this makes it into a video, as I'm a really big fan of the channel. So that, my friends, was a collection of some strange and scary subscriber-submitted stories. Stories from listeners and people who like to send their stories in to me. Today's video had a lot of technical issues as it was being recorded. Not technology, just technical issues that I'm not going to get into here at the end of this video. I may make a post about it at some point in time, just to kind of explain things, but just know that today's video was stressful. It was stressful. But we made it. We got the video done. We are good to go. Sorry it wasn't up earlier. Like I said, stressful. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed the stories. If you did, please do thank your fellow subscribers in the comments saying thank you guys, appreciate the stories, or any variation of that. Don't use that exact sentence. That'd be really weird to see in the comments numerous times. You don't really have to say anything. But anyways, just thank your fellow listeners, I suppose. You can also do a like to the video, hit the thumbs up button. You can subscribe to the video, not to the video. You don't want to subscribe to the one video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. You can also comment your favorite story. Or join Patreon and memberships to get early access to content like this. Super thanks, which is a tip to the channel. Go to astheravendreams.com to send in your stories, find places where you can follow me on social media, and find all the websites where you can listen to this podcast in long form on multiple platforms. All that said, my friend, I hope you're having a beautiful day. Hope you have a beautiful rest of your week. Hope I see you again here very soon. But until then, remember that you are loved, that you are valid, and that you are important. And you're the best that you can be, don't forget it. Much love, and sleep well.